Okay, we're gonna work on Landscape Color Study 5, which is another Inness painting. We did the Monk last week, and now we're gonna do early autumn Montclair. And this is a fairly famous Inness. Inness is an American painter. This is done in oil paint, and it is at the Delaware Art Museum. So you could go to the Delaware Art Museum and actually see it after you paint it. So tell your mom you need to go. All right, we're gonna measure the painting first. So this is almost 7. So I could count it as 7 because my tolerance is a 16th when I measure your thing. And then this is 4.5 plus a 16th. And again, I could count that as 4.5. I'm gonna go a little bit over. I'm gonna try to show you how to split that 16th in half as you're measuring so that you can be more exact. Okay, I've got to find the center of my paper. And remember, any construction lines that you don't paint over, you need to erase. Because some of you are giving me papers that have like these thick black lines all the way around. And don't go all the way to the edge because you don't need to. But also, make sure after you unstretch the paper that you erase those. Just, you want a nice white margin around the edge. It helps your eye to rest. Okay, so I found the center of my paper. I found the center lines of my paper. So I'm going to show you how to do this. So 4.5, this is 4.5 plus a 16th, which is 9/16. Okay, so if I just took 4.5, I would say that that is 2.25. But if I want to add that 16th, I need to move my ruler over to the next 16th because I'm trying to go bigger. And split the 16th. This clear ruler makes it really easy because I can put it like a sight line, my pencil line like a sight line, and just in between that 16th measurement. You might have 30-second measurements here on your ruler if you have an extra row, so you might be able to actually measure this. So I'm going to mark the 0 and the 4 and 9/16 in order to show that whole dimension. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing here, and I need to be careful because I want these tick marks to line up and be straight. So I'm going to mark the 0. I'm moving it in between that extra 16th, and then I'm going to add this extra 16th over here to make 4 and 9/16. Okay, and I'm thinking about it mostly visually. Like, I'm doing a little bit of math, but I'm mostly thinking about it visually. Okay, so then on this side, I'm a little bit short of 7. So half of 7 would be 3.5. And then I want to move this way down a 32nd or half a 16th. Okay, so I'm going to mark 6 and 15/16 on this side and 0 on this side. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to split 7 in half. I'm going to move it over a 32nd or half a 16th. I don't have 30 seconds on this ruler. I'm going to put that pencil line right in the middle of my 16th, and then I'm going to mark the 6 and 15/16, and I'm going to mark the 0. Okay, so then I have a rectangle that's centered on the page. There we go. All right, and we're gonna make sure that I erase these things before I turn my painting in, okay? I don't wanna see pencil lines. This is a painting, not a drawing. This isn't multimedia. We're just using acrylic paint in a traditional way, which also means that we're gonna make sure we use opaque paint and not use acrylic like watercolor. Because part of the skill that we're learning is to use the paint properly. So if you on your own want to make your own paintings of washy acrylic, you don't hold back. But for this assignment, I shouldn't be able to see through the paint at the end. Okay, so I'm putting this on my clothes to make sure that it's not going to stick to the paper too much. Okay, and this is the same tape that I've been using, so it has this little divot in it somewhere, and I'm avoiding that by turning that to the outside. And this one isn't quite halfway on, halfway off. I might put another piece of tape down here. Okay, I'm gonna do this, and now I'm deciding that I don't like that there's only a little bit of tape here. So I'm gonna put another piece, but I don't have to put it on my clothes because it's not actually gonna touch the paper. So I can let this be extra sticky. Okay. So we have our paper measured and stretched, and now I'm gonna set up my palette. And I'm always gonna put my colors in the same order so that I don't have to think about where they are. I don't have to figure it out. I can learn subconsciously where they are and then just always go back to those. It'll help make my mixing more automatic and less stressful. Using black as a color. We're gonna put 2 whites. I think I'm pretty much out of white in there, so I'm gonna use this white. I'm gonna put 2 whites so that I always have one clean one. And then I'm gonna draw a circle and put my medium in it. You don't have to draw a circle. This is just a suggestion for beginning painters so they can remember that this is not white paint because it looks like white paint. Okay. So I'm gonna get out my palette knife and then I'm gonna think about which colors I wanna simplify to here. Okay, I feel like this is pretty straightforward. I've got brown. No, let me count this as green. So I've got green. I don't know, this is kind of a mix between green and this like orangey brown. So let's say orangey brown, green, and blue are my colors that I need. This eventually becomes kind of purple, and then this eventually, down as we get down here, becomes more brown. But what I think he's actually doing is kind of mixing the red that's in here, and then he's mixing maybe this color into the green to get this color. So it looks complex, but we can simplify. And the reason that we simplify is because that enables us to get into the landscape. This painting is pretty complex, 29 by 45 inches. It's quite a bit bigger than this painting that we're actually going to make, which is a color study, not a copy. So we're examining the color and we're trying to figure out how did Inness use color and shape to approach the landscape. And then we're going to learn from that so that we can approach the landscape ourselves in a more expert way. So we consider ourselves, in copying a masterwork, to be learning directly from the master. Okay, I'm gonna go a tiny bit yellow here. We'll see. I don't want to change it all because I might be wrong. So I'm gonna take some of this. Yeah, I think that's too green, but there's something about this blue that's a little brighter than what I've got. Okay, let's see. Let's try a little more blue and see if that just simply solves the problem. And the other thing I want to try to do is red, but I have a different palette than Inness, I am sure. We have a color called primary blue, which is not the same as a regular pigment. So whatever blue or blues Inness had is gonna affect the blue that he used. Okay, that's better. So I just need to add a little bit of red to get this. This is slightly leaning towards purple, and I want to be careful about how much I put in here. I can always add, I cannot take away without remixing. I have to jump off and remix. Okay, that's not quite enough. And I'm always mixing off my palette knife because I want to keep my colors nice and clean. If I get blue in here and then later on I try to mix it with yellow, I am going to end up with brown because the primary colors of pigment generally make brown, and I want to make brown but not yet. I want to still be able to make orange, etc. Okay, I'm just adding a little more. Okay, and if you remember our pattern, I'm pretty happy with that. I'm gonna go with that. If you remember our pattern, we spend time mixing these three main colors, and we figure out what we need here, and then as we progress in the painting, we don't worry as much about mixing the colors with the brush or keeping the colors clean, because we're able to you know, use up our paint, and we're getting toward, like, once we get to towards the end of our palette. But in the beginning, we want to keep things nice and clean. Okay, now this is orange. Okay, you see me trying to make this orange, and I've got like a lighter orange here and then a darker orange, but I'm just gonna try to make it an orange. I'm gonna add a tiny bit of blue here. Let's see what happens. And I'm just gonna use part of this because I'm experimenting, but what I need to do is dull the intensity of this color. Okay, so that's generally pretty good. I need probably a redder version of this and a yellower, brighter version that's lighter for this, but yeah, I think that needs to be more red. Okay, that's actually quite a beautiful color. I'm not sure if it's right, but it's really nice. Okay. Yeah, now I'm back to needing to add a little bit of blue. So this is the real thing, people. I don't paint before I paint with you. Okay, too much blue. So now I'm gonna take this and make orange again. And you probably got this faster than I did. So if you've already gotten this color and you didn't put too much blue, good for you. And you don't have to keep mixing. All right, I'm okay with this. This is pretty good. I can work with that. Now, let's look at this green. I want this kind of green. Now again, all of these colors that he was able to get is determined by his palette, and our colors are determined by our palette. I'm going to use all this yellow, which means I need more yellow, which is okay. Yellow is the weakest pigment, so it has a hard time standing up against these other colors. Okay, so I'm just going to make a basic green. It's easy to get too much blue in here, like I just did, so that it turns into a turquoise, because the blue is much stronger than the yellow. Okay, now this is nothing like that green. So I gotta sort of dull the intensity and shift it to more of an earth tone. In order to do that, I'm actually going to think about, I need something like this, maybe something like this. But when I'm mixing these, it's not quite giving me what I want. So let's add a little bit of black. I don't want to add a lot of black. Again, black is really strong, so I want to be careful and cautious. I think I need more black and yellow. And actually, you know what I'm going to do, just to see what happens? I'm going to mix yellow and black by themselves, because that's going to make a green, because our blue has, our black has a blue undertone. Look, look, look. Okay, that's pretty good. And also less complicated, less opportunity to get muddy. So a muddy color happens when we can't identify, is it cool or warm? Like when it just gets too convoluted. Okay, so I'm gonna actually make another version of this color, and I'm gonna put a little more yellow in it. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that, but I'm gonna mix it with red and just see what happens. Now I have too much red, that's okay. Now I'm making this color again. Okay, let's put some black in here. Actually, I need some of this. I'm gonna put some of this over here. When we get in here. Not too much black. Okay. Yeah, that's pretty good. I'm gonna use those together. Okay, so I have 3 basic colors. I've got a green, even though, as always, I've cheated a little bit to get a range of greens. I've got orange, and I've got blue, because those are the main colors that I see here. I see some white, but I'm not gonna count that as a color. Okay, I need water. And I'm gonna try to create a structure of this painting with these colors. So I'm gonna start with blue just because it's the farthest one back, and I'm gonna ignore this purple for now while I build this structure. I'm kind of concentrating on this blue. Now I can think of this as a quadrant. This is about half, and you can see the horizon line splits. Yeah, the horizon line splits that. Like it goes from like a little bit below the halfway mark to a little bit above the halfway mark. So I need to make sure I have this diagonal thing in here. Okay. This is really bright, really bright. Okay, so let me tone it down again. I feel like it doesn't look as bright in the painting, or on my palette as it does in the painting when I actually put it on here. Okay, that's a little better. Okay, and I've got a cloud here. I'm just gonna paint over these trees and deal with that later. Okay, so then this is almost the center. So then I've got some sky showing through here and here, maybe a little bit over here. And again, I'm not just gonna paint this whole thing, the whole top of this blue, because I wanna always be reacting to the structure of the drawing. That's gonna give layers of sensitivity to my painting that I otherwise wouldn't have. This is not like a formulaic kind of craft painting. I'm not trying to do a trick. I'm just, okay. Now I'm gonna go in here with this orange color. I got this autumn fall leaf color. All right, I've got green down here at the bottom that I'm starting to notice. So I'm gonna avoid that just a little bit. Okay, if this is my tree, so these colors are going to need to shift into a different brown at some point, but since I'm trying to simplify, I'm going to put these in here. Okay. So I think it's actually a little further over than I have it. Okay, I'm gonna count this as brown here, just so that I have a contrast as I'm developing the painting. Okay. So I'm looking over here for this green in the light. Yeah, this is gonna be brown. And then let me go for this darker color here. And it's interesting because even though this foreground is obviously closer to us, it is less noticeable. Your eye's like drawn back this way. And the contrast between what's not going on here and all of the excitement visually that goes on back here is pretty interesting. It's unexpected. And yet, it is similar to how we actually do perceive the landscape. Because we're often looking at a distance in the landscape rather than what's close to us. That like distant vista is what's appealing. It makes us feel small or like we're a part of something big, right? The slowness is somewhat due to not having mixed enough paint even the second time. Okay, so let's try this again. I'm gonna need more green than this, and I'm gonna have to modify it quite a bit. So we'll do yellow. And that's all this original one is. Okay. All right, we're getting there. Okay, I'm gonna go in here and try to go a little more brown. I'm gonna take some of this and add a little bit of blue. Okay, I don't know if this is, yeah, that's okay. Okay, so I'm gonna chase this branch, like this beautiful articulated branch. spider webs. But I just need dark here to push this back. Make sure I push it back. Because that depth of space, in contrast to this, is really important in this painting. Okay, so chasing him, following him. Just a little bit of shape here. Okay. And then finally, I've got this dark ridge back here. Okay, and that pushes the space back. So let me go into making this. Let's see, let's cover this a little more because I want it to be opaque. I don't want to be able to see through this paint. And that's going to help me later on. And I want to lighten this and then make it a little bit, like add a little bit of white. Because I need this to come forward. These light areas where the sun is hitting the trees. That's too light. Okay, I'm gonna try this and just see what it looks like in the painting. Okay, too light. So what if I mix this one? Okay, that's a little better. Okay. I also think I could use this color back here for this little house. In here. let's tackle this white, which is really kind of a cream color. Let's put a little bit of this in it and just see. Okay, that looks pretty good actually. Yeah, eventually I need to use this one. And part of this I'm gonna glaze. Glaze this light here because I want some of this other paint to come through. Abstract these shapes in my mind. I'm not thinking about this being a tree. I'm thinking about it being like negative space between the tree shadow and the tree trunk. I'm not thinking about that. Okay, where I want it to come forward. Not only do I need to make it brighter, so I'm not using glaze, but I'm also needing to put these shadows in here, like those darks. Okay. Let me finish up with this white for now. And I would say that this and this are basically the same. So I'm gonna put this cloud in here. And he's going back and forth between the leaves and the cloud to get that background feeling of the cloud, but also like the light is pushing forward, which is so exciting, as we've talked about in other paintings. Keep wanting to make this brighter. What if I just made it plain white? Yeah, there we go. The blue is drying out. To soften the edge of this cloud, I just need to mix these colors together. Add a little bit of white to some of this green, but get it to pull forward too. And the white also helps the opacity of the paint. Okay, so that's coming forward. All right, we're starting to have a painting. There's a tiny bit of it over here. gonna glaze with something to get this to go back to green. A little bit more paint in here to just get this to be nice and solid. And you can see that the layers of paint help create that like visual complexity in the ground. And I didn't even really have to do much to make that happen. Let me go back to my orange color. I'm gonna have to mix more just because I'm out here. And what did I do to make that? I need orange and yellow. And then today is not my best day for mixing colors. Okay, so I'm gonna make more orange and put a little bit of this in it. And that way it reduces the amount of black that I have involved here. Okay, and that's a bit to my advantage that it's a slightly different color because again, it adds this depth. And then over here, I think I want to use this greenish color that I need to layer these leaves over top of this cloud. It's not quite dry. It doesn't totally do what I want it to do. Okay. Okay, now I'm gonna mix blue one more time just because I'm out or it's dry. I need a tiny bit of red. I'm gonna layer this in here because I want to pay attention to the relative value, and I think the value of that blue that I had isn't quite light enough. Something about this primary blue when it dries just seems a little unnatural. Okay. Let's turn part of this into a tad bit of purple. And I'll hit this over here. See, that's the stem of this tree. Sorry, the trunk of this tree. It's real tiny. And I got this guy, and I'm gonna put the horizon in here. His head pops up a little bit more. And then I'm gonna glaze this shadow that just goes all the way across, so I don't want to lose everything else. Little tiny bits of like cattle or something in here, but they help articulate this dawning sun. Okay, and we have a color study painting of Inness's Early Autumn Montclair, and now you can head out to the Delaware Art Museum.